Hello, everybody. Sad news out of Ukraine. They just got their first F-16s, and the initial news was that they were shooting down cruise missiles and doing very well. And then we learned that one of their first pilots, the initial cadre, was killed tragically in combat operations in an F-16. So, unfortunately, though, it looks like it may have actually been friendly fire. We're going to take a look at a New York Times article kind of that goes over what may have happened and the dismissal of the head of the Air Force.
3, 2, 1, fight off.
So the New York Times is reporting Zelensky dismisses the head of the Air Force days after the F-16 crash. He gave no reason, but there are indications that friendly fire may have brought down the jet, a Western official says. So this is obviously unverified. There's a Western official, so there's no real name attached to it. But it says he dismissed the head of the country's Air Force after the crash of the F-16. It may have been a friendly fire incident because the preliminary indications indicate friendly fire from a Patriot missile battery might have brought down the jet. Although it could be a mechanical failure, to me, that's unlikely. Pilot error, I mean, if you consider G-induced loss of consciousness, control flight in the terrain, it's always possible. But it's not unrealistic that a Patriot, because think of fog of war. You've got a Russian attack with multiple cruise missiles, multiple, drones, whatever they're sending across, and relatively inexperienced Patriot operators, even experienced Patriot operators. I mean, we had in the Gulf War, Patriot operators shoot down our own people, Hornet pilots. It's not unheard of. Friendly fire is an unfortunate part of war. Even if you're, even if you're well trained and highly experienced, I've seen it in our exercises. I've seen it at Red Flag a lot, where you have to correctly identify your target. There may be some jamming. There may be comm jamming. There's all kinds of different factors that can play into this, and then Patriot operator or even another jet can see a hot contact, so a contact who's nose on to you because maybe he was going cold, maybe he was turning back around for something, build range, do something, and just in the fog of war, something unfortunate like this happens. So I wouldn't dismiss this theory because it is very common, and one of the sad parts about conflict, modern conflict, because positive identification of targets is sometimes challenging, and especially when you're in a saturation event like this where they're shooting a bunch of drones and these operators are just trying to shoot down as many as they can, and they're just not used to it, or maybe he had a malfunction on his aircraft as far as his IFF, so whether it's squawking the appropriate codes or anything like that. So there's a lot that could happen. This resulted in the dismissal of the Air Force commander. They announced, Zelensky announced, and he's replacing him with another general. He didn't give him a specific reason, but it's right after the F-16 crash. We need to get stronger, take care of people, take care of personnel, take care of soldiers. It was on Monday, defending against an intense aerial attack by Russian forces, and it hit an apartment block in the second largest city, killing at least 7 people, wounding scores more. I think that's the attack, not the crash. Keeping track of what the good guy and what the bad guy, particularly when there are missiles flying around at the same time, is difficult, says Mark Kansian, senior advisor. And that's correct. Fratricide is a huge problem, is what he says, and I agree with that. You just don't, I mean, it is tough, especially when you're in an environment where there's just hundreds of targets or even dozens of targets or whatever. It becomes tough to do, especially when you don't have a lot of training of integration. Remember, these F-16s are brand new to this front. So the Ukrainians are brand new to integrating with the Patriots and using that. So sometimes, this stuff unfortunately happens, which is not good. So they took delivery of half a dozen. So there's only 6. Now there's 5. But they're going to eventually get 45. Pilot of the plane, Lieutenant Colonel Alexei Mess, died in the crash. He is one of the a dozen pilots. So he'd just gotten back from U.S. training. They had shot down 4 Russian cruise missiles on Monday. So it's bittersweet, right? The F-16 shows up, shoots down 4 cruise missiles, but then in the same breath, we lost an F-16 and F-16 pilot to friendly fire. Flying these things is a high-risk activity, Ben Berry says, and then it goes on to talk about, some of the other stuff. So just wanted to talk about that real quick. Nickel on the grass for that fighter pilot. It happens to us. It's happened to, the United States. We have shot our own people down with Patriots. We've shot our own people down with missiles and guns. We've done it in training. We've done it in combat. The Russians have shot themselves down on numerous occasions. We've talked about that on the channel. It's not uncommon. It is an unfortunate effect of war, especially war where you're not always going to get a visual ID on what you're shooting. So you're relying on sensors, radar, transponders, all that stuff. You're relying on so many different things that can fail. And, sometimes this just happens. It's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate it happens, right out the gate. But what I would hope is that with a new commander and a new focus, they will train and learn to integrate together to prevent this from happening again. Because that's all you can do. You can mourn the loss and you can prevent this from happening again and hope that it doesn't, because there's nothing worse than a fratricide. Because, at least losing someone in combat, well, okay, that's one thing, right? Because they were at least doing the mission. But a fratricide, I mean, there's just no excuse. So, and I'm not trying to make excuses for them. I'm just explaining why it may have happened. And, the fact that, you can't make any judgments based on it, because it is something that is part of aerial combat in the 21st century. So nickel on the grass for that fighter pilot. And hopefully the more F-16 show up and they'll be able to get more pilots up airborne and with better integration. So let me know in the comments what you think. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks for watching. See you next time.